Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 107. I sincerely hope everybody's having a great week out there. I hope everybody enjoyed their Labor Day holiday, celebrating the contributions of the working men and women of this country. We have a fantastic interview coming up for you today. We're going to be joined by Dave Kirby of the Belfast Cowboys. And this is an interesting connection that Dave and I made. Dave is a listener of the Drum Shuffle and reached out to me and said, hey, here's a list of guys that I would love to hear interviews with. And we went back and forth via email for, a few days. And I was successful in getting some of the folks he recommended for interviews on the show. But as I got to know more about Dave, I was like, hey, man, why don't you come on the show and talk to us? And he was hesitant at first, to be honest. But I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Dave has a very unique perspective. He's in a great band, does some great drumming, but he's also a very successful businessman. And I think we fail to talk about some of that stuff on this show. And that is, a lot of folks do not make their main living from drumming. So I think this is going to be a good one for everybody. And we'll be joined by Dave right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cowboys Drumsticks. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cowboys Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cowboys Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cowboys difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cowboys make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cowboys Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cowboys Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cowboys Drumsticks, visit them online at loscowboysdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cowboys Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cowboys Drumsticks. All right, guys and girls, as I mentioned in the intro, we're about to be joined by Dave Kirby of the Belfast Cowboys. Dave is a drummer that lives up in the Minneapolis area of Minnesota. Please forgive me, I don't remember the exact town that he lives in, but he grew up in the Minneapolis scene, which is a very fertile ground for great music in the United States. I mean, I can name, 24 wonderful bands that came from that area. But as I was saying, Dave and I connected via email and started talking, and I thought, man, this is going to be a great story to feature. And folks, let me tell you, you're never going to meet a nicer guy than Dave. Seriously, he's doing a lot of great work up in that Minnesota scene with his band, the Belfast Cowboys. If you have not heard of them, they are essentially a Van Morrison tribute. and they are fantastic. My first thought was a Van Morrison tribute. It's either going to be wonderful or it's going to be terrible. And I'm very happy to report that his band is fantastic. They do a great job. And Dave has a lot of wonderful insights to offer. And I thought we should share his story here. So please help me welcome to the Drum Shuffle, Dave Kirby. Hey, Dave, good afternoon. How's it going, man?
It's excellent. Great to hang out with you.
Oh, man, no, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's always good to have, individuals on the Drum Shuffle who play at a high level, and we'll get into your playing certainly. But thanks for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And, I think I mentioned this to you, but I kind of got introduced to you during COVID when I was, basically grounded and under house arrest. And I've kind of done an immersion of your show. So I feel like we've been hanging out together for the last couple of months.
Yeah, man, it's really interesting. I've had some guests on the show that have kind of made the comment, I feel like we've been friends for 30 years, and it's weird for me because, I guess you don't ever really realize when you do a podcast or something like this, how many people are actually listening. You know what I mean? It's kind of strange. I mean, that's one of the cool byproducts of having a show is, people do listen to it, but I kind of do it just for my own edification and joy. It's kind of cool that this doesn't pay the bills, so to speak,
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so, being a proud Minnesotan, I want to talk to you a little bit, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but I want to talk to you a bit about that great scene up there that has just been going on for years and years and years. But start us at the beginning. Talk to us a little bit about how you grew up and how you got into music and drumming to begin with.
Yeah, I was born in 60, so actually just turned 60 this year. And so my dad was a really great musician, and I remember growing up that there was a clarinet, a saxophone, an upright bass, a trombone, and a bunch of banjos. And my dad could pick up any one of those and make music with them. And so he was really into music. He had played with this regional polka band that were, kind of famous in the area. They have 4 records out. I actually have them hanging on the wall here in my loft. I was able to score some copies. So everything, in my childhood was kind of built around music, and he, sang in a barbershop quartet and just a super talented musical guy. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and so I didn't have any older brothers or sisters feeding me popular music, so I was kind of beholden to whatever my dad was listening to. And, to be honest, when I was a young kid, the dude was kind of a square, it was, and I think a lot of it is the byproduct of when he grew up and the music that he grew up on and grew up with. In later years, I discovered that really wasn't the case. But, I always kind of had to listen to whatever he was listening to. And I was always really into the music and always kind of loved playing drums. My, mom told me I was like a lot of drummers, banging pots and pans in the kitchen and ice cream pails and things like that. And when my dad was in this Dixieland band, and whenever they would do any kind of a thing, whether it was just a gathering at somebody's house or a thing at the band shell at the park, I would always kind of park myself really close, annoyingly close to the drummer, and I was just enthralled.
Yeah.
And there was this guy that lived on the next block who was a drummer, and I just remember in the summer, whenever I could hear him playing with the windows open, I would go park outside of his bedroom window, sit in the grass and just listen to him play. And actually his mom came out of the house once and asked who I was, where I was from, and what I was doing sitting in the lawn. And I remember from time to time, he had a band and they would play in the garage, and there would be, this collection of kids sitting on the concrete in the driveway listening to this. So I really, I felt like I had that bug early. And then my dad kind of got into, up until this time we had like the gigantic hi-fi console, the all-in-one with, the radio, the phonograph, and, room for 100 albums stored, like this giant piece of furniture. And he started getting interested in modular equipment. And so there was a guy at the Team Electronics store that was helping him, select this gear, but they also sold music there. And he had a huge influence on my dad, like got him exposed to a lot of stuff. And I started noticing, and my brothers and sisters and I started noticing, like there was stuff creeping into the playlist, like the band.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
The Mamas and the Papas, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and like just progressively cooler stuff, Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then Elton John kind of came into our household, and that was that his first record, called 11/17/70. It's a live recording in some studio in New York. It was right before that and Tumbleweed Connection were like the two things that we just played constantly. So I was really interested in the drumming. My dad wanted me to get involved in band, and I can't remember if it was the school's rule or if it was my dad's rule that, before you play drums, you're going to have to learn another instrument. So he kind of forced me down the trumpet pathway, and I did it and absolutely hated it. And I think it was like fifth grade or something. I just, at the end of the year, I said, I'm done with this. I really want to play drums. So, I had been doing like babysitting the neighbor kids, mowing lawns, shoveling snow in the winter, and had saved up a bunch of money. And I really, I knew I wanted to be a drummer, and I was going to buy drums if it killed me. So like every night or a couple nights a week, I would go through the want ads in the newspaper and look for musical instruments and musicians wanted. So I found this drum kit. It was like $110. It was a Kingston red sparkle 5-piece kit. And I told my dad, I said, I have the money saved up. All I need you to give me a ride there and give me a ride back with the drums. And I think that was when he kind of realized, he's not going away with this stuff. So,
yeah.
So
well, I mean, no parent wants to hear, I'm going to be a drummer and I've bought a drum set. I mean, it's like, the peaceful home goes away at that point, right?
Yeah. And they were super supportive in later years. And, I remember my mom telling me it got to the point where she was able to even take a nap while I was practicing because she just became so accustomed to it. Yeah. So, but I got my drum set. I have it set up in my bedroom. I'm playing along with records. And then in the 6th grade, there was this spring talent show, and a couple of the guys that I knew that I had been in band with that were trumpet players wanted to do, something for the show, and they knew I had a drum set, so they wanted me to be their drummer. So I think we did One Tin Soldier and some Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass song.
Nice.
So we're practicing, we're doing this thing, and one of the kids, I just remember him saying, my dad is kind of weird, but if you're going to bring all these drums and put them on stage, just make sure you hit everything at least once. Otherwise, he's going to want to know why you didn't. So we're doing the talent show, and I played something wildly inappropriate just to make sure I touched all the bases. So weird. And then the next year, talent show again, but I had met this kid who had a bass guitar. There's another kid in the school that played guitar. So we did House of the Rising Sun at the talent show. And in 7th grade, I talked my way back into the band program. And because I knew I really wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn how to read music and, really get some chops down. So talked my way back into the band program. And I remember in 8th grade, this we had this student teacher from college. He was getting his degree, and for the spring concert, he proposed that we do this piece that was is called Rock Slide, and it featured the trombone section, but there was also a place for like a 32-bar drum solo in it. So I had my kit set up in the practice room at the school, and I basically just started squatting in that room. And so I'd go to school early in the morning so I could bang on the drums, stay after the whole thing. And so we're going to do this piece, and he hung with me after school, and he said, I'm like, tell me what you're thinking about this 32-bar solo. Just play a little bit of what you have on your mind. So I go into full-on, as close to Keith Moon mode as I ever get, but just wailing away on everything and, start running out of gas at about bar 8 and had pretty much pulled every trick out of the bag halfway through the solo. So he stopped me and he said, I just want you to pull that sheet music out of the folder and I just want to look at it with you. So I pull this sheet music out of the folder, and he just breaks down the whole composition and says, just look at how this is broken into 4 distinct parts. And, I could see how instrumentation was getting layered in, sections were coming in, and kind of the roller coaster of the piece. He said, let's just think about your drum solo the same way. So for the first 8 bars, let's just lay a foundation, and he said, I just want you to think like all snare drum and maybe a little bit of hi-hat. And then in the second 8, you're going to do some cymbal crashes, maybe introduce a tom or 2, but the snare is still going to be home bass. And then the third section is going to be all toms. And then that final 8, you just go do what you just played for me. And it was a really eye-opening conversation because I learned later that I really didn't, I didn't love reading music, but I loved having kind of that global approach to, how to put the song together, how to put that solo together. So that really, that really opened my eyes. So we do the spring concert, and now I've got, I'm meeting people I've never met because, hey, that's the kid with the drum solo. And, so I get this phone call on a Saturday afternoon, and this guy, I knew of him because he was a couple years older, and he was one of the tough kids. Like, everybody was afraid of him because he was kind of a fighter. And he calls me on the phone. He said, I heard you're a drummer, and we want you to be in our band, and we're coming over to practice right now. And, like, and my dad had... When I was very young, he was a police officer, so he kind of knew everybody in town, and he knew like this kid and this kid's older brothers, and I just knew this was going to be a bad thing. But before I could even say, I need to talk to my parents about this, the guy hangs the phone up, and literally 18 minutes later, they're pulling into my driveway, schlepping guitar amps up to my bedroom, and I remember the first song we played was Walk Away by the James Gang.
Nice.
And the second song we played was Mother Freedom by Brad. And we, went through those and then played a bunch more. And it's like, yeah, this is really cool. And this feeling really well. Every musician does. But, that thing where you get 4 people in a room that have basically nothing else in common and don't really might not socialize or hang together outside of this context, but, they come from 4 different places, and all of a sudden they're making this thing together.
Yeah, man.
Sound. Yeah. And there's just nothing, there's nothing like it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the magic right there, right? I mean, when that first experience you have making, honest to God music with other human beings as a drummer, I mean, that's the stuff that if we could bottle it up and sell it to everybody else that doesn't have any musical inclinations, I mean, I've said for years, we would have world peace if everybody could feel that, So So, I mean, obviously you started at a fairly early age, and you, went through kind of the school band thing, and you dated yourself. So I'm not letting any secrets out here, but, you were growing up in that time period where, you mentioned some of the, the big influences of the day, but, who were some of the other early influences for you? Were you into Zeppelin and Aerosmith and the Stones and all that stuff, or not?
I was really into, and I think part of it was just because of the kind of music that my dad listened to. I was always, as the oldest child, you learn quickly, like, you're responsible for your own behavior, but you're also responsible for your siblings. And so my MO is like the path of least resistance. So what can I bring into this house that my dad is going to appreciate and allow to be played on the stereo? So I was really into like the Eagles, the Byrds, Jackson Browne, and then eventually, got more into like Stones, Zeppelin, Queen, Aerosmith. And, I found real quickly, I loved John Bonham's drumming, like just the visceral thunder of it. But I also found myself really drawn to, guys like Russ Kunkel, Jim Keltner, guys who were just laying it down and letting the band do its thing around it. And I really consciously, like, that was the style of playing that I really wanted to develop. So, we had bands through high school, met a lot of great people, but I always, I remember my dad saying at some point, if you just start a band, your friends, their family, and people with no musical taste are going to love you just because it's a cool thing to put a band together. But he said, if you really want to do this, you have to think about paying attention to the details, like taking the time to get the beginnings, the endings, the harmonies, like get that stuff right so you can feel good about what you're doing. So, we practice constantly. One of the guys that was in the band I was in high school, he's a killer trumpet player. He's made his living. He was in the Air Force band. He now plays, I don't know if you know the actor Gary Sinise.
Oh, sure.
But hit the Lieutenant Dan band.
Yeah.
Kirk is the trumpeter in that band, and he travels all over the world doing those gigs. But he's also like the first call guy in Chicago. So, a bunch of years ago, Aretha Franklin came through town. He was called for the gig, the Temptations. So it was just kind of cool. Somebody I shared a lot of time in the basement with, made that whole journey and has made a living as a musician his whole life. He does a lot of arranging and composing and things like that. So as we graduated from high school, Kirk, the trumpet player, and the bass player and I all got an apartment together, but those two were going to college. I had intended to go to college and wanted to either be a band director or an English teacher, but my parents made too much money for me to get funding, but not enough money to pay for me to go to college. The great dilemma. So I kind of realized if I'm going to take a whack at this music thing, this is probably the time I should start thinking about making a move. And there were two bands that I had set my sights on, and one was a band from the area that they did like a ballroom circuit, and they would do these dances and come through town and play the local ballroom every month. And I was a huge fan of them for all my junior high and high school years. And I really wanted, like, that's the kind of band I want to be in. And then there was another band that I had kept hearing about, and everybody I knew who was of drinking age absolutely loved this band. Like, they were just wildly popular. So I start, poking around, trying to get to know a little bit more. And the ballroom band decides their drummer was leaving, and they were going to replace him. And somebody I had been in a band with, one of the iterations of my high school band, was cousins with the guy who ran the band. He said, I'll see if I can get you an audition. So I go and audition with the guy, jumped in my car, drove like 2 hours, loaded into his basement, played a bunch of stuff together, and he gave me some feedback. And, like, we don't always have sound reinforcements. You got to hit harder, that kind of stuff. And I ended up not getting the gig, and I was really heartbroken about it. But he sent, like, 5 days after the audition, I got a card in the mail. He said, I really appreciate you, coming and auditioning with us. We've decided to go in another direction. We need somebody who can be a lead singer. And I knew in my heart, like, my drumming wasn't up to what it needed to be for that gig. But it was it was one of those life lessons, like, and I have been thinking about it a lot as I was thinking about having this conversation with you, like how the thing I remember the most about it is the guy took the time to say, you didn't get the gig and this is why, but he said, you're a really nice young man and I know you're going to do great things. And it's like, I don't know, just being able to say no, thank you, but do it with grace and still be kind about it. And, it really, that stuck with me for a long time because, there are a lot of situations where it's easy to, not be your best self, but, learning how to give somebody bad news and do it in a gracious way, even if they don't love what you're saying to them, they can hear it and still retain their dignity. So anyway, option one is off the table because I flunked. So I get wind that this other band is looking for a guy. So I took a tape of a cassette of a bunch of stuff, of recordings of our bands that I had been in high school, and went to the club to give it to the guy and said, I heard you're looking for a drummer. Here's a tape of some of the stuff that I'm into. And they were playing at there's a club attached to a bowling alley, and they hadn't really told the drummer they were getting rid of him, so he wanted me to meet me in the bowling alley. So I go to meet him at the bowling alley to do the secret handoff of the cassette. Meanwhile, in the club, the drummer's got, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Gino Vanelli album, Brother to Brother, but
sure.
The title song has just this unbelievable drum groove and some really cool soloing in there. And, the guy they're about to fire is got that cranked up coming through the monitors and he's playing along with it. And I'm like, oh, wow, you guys should hang on to this dude. So they called me back and said, we want to come and talk to you. So they came over to my apartment. They were there for 90 minutes. They didn't want to hear me play. We didn't really talk about music. They just wanted to get to know me. They went through my album collection and, just kind of to see what kind of stuff I was listening to. And, really what it came down to is the guy was an excellent drummer, but he was a complete pain in the ass. And they just don't, they're like, we're too old for this stuff. So I got the gig basically on, personality. And these guys had been an established band for at least 10 years by the time I joined. And they had been through a lot of versions, like Horns once upon a time, and then now kind of scaling down. And they sent me some tapes with the set list and all that kind of stuff, and I familiarized myself with it. And it's like, I can play that groove. This will be fine. And we went to the first gig, and we did set up, sound check, ran through a couple of songs, and started just like rehearsing some things. And I realized really quickly, like, these guys play to a level that is beyond anything I've ever been involved in. Like, and you talk about the details of, here's how it starts. Here's what you have to play on this. Like, I got to feel you. I can't hear you. And I just realized I'm playing with pros now, and I got to get this together fast. So the bass player, and who was also the band leader, was also a drummer, and he like spent a lot of time with me, said, this is the stuff you got to be able to do, and really took me through it. And really, I wasn't the right drummer for the gig, but I was the right person for the gig. And he said, I'm going to commit to working with you. But, and it's one of those times in life where you just go, oh, I have to make a decision. Am I going to put my tail between my legs and go home? Or is this going to be an opportunity for me to be teachable and be humble and just take the advice? And I did. And I swear, like, my drumming improved 50 to 75% in the 2 years I was with those guys. And my employability improved by 100%.
Yeah.
They're like, here's what on time is. We're going to rehearse these days every week, because in those days, like late 70s, early 80s, especially in the middle of the country, like everybody had live music. Every hotel bar had a club, and people kind of joke about the Holiday Inn band thing, like the Bill Murray Lounge Act kind of thing. But the reality is, in a lot of these outlying communities, the bar at the hotel might be the only live music within 30 or 40 miles. So these places were like packed 6 nights a week. I mean, Monday night, 200 people in the bar rocking out like they don't have to work in the morning. So it was like they were working steady. I think I was making like $500 a week at that time, which, in the late 70s for a kid who was 19 or 20 years old was just a boatload of money. Yeah,
that's real money in those days.
Yeah. So, but what was happening, what I started feeling is, the band leader was 10 years older than me, and the other two guys were like 15 years older. So, we're working steady and making money, but the hang time, I don't really have a lot in common with these guys. So, we'd all be kind of doing our things during the day. One guy was traveling in an RV, had his wife and his kid along with him. And, it's like different vibe. And so I started thinking like, I want to do something a little more my speed, my age group, that kind of stuff. So, I told him I was going to leave the band. I kind of went back home and, just kind of calling around trying to figure out what's available. And then this band came through town, this country rock band. They were called Sagebrush, and they were the first time I saw them, I was in awe. Just the energy of it. They're 5 guys in the band, but they're carrying their own sound and lights. They were carrying like 32 par 64s, if you remember those old bikes. They're hot as blazes. I mean, but the whole thing, like the light show, they were tying songs together. Like you blink and they're 20 minutes into the show. Harmonies are tight, right, and on point. And I love them as a fan. And so I introduced myself. I went and saw them literally every night, got to know the guys a little bit. And their drummer had a fell in a hiking accident and broke a couple of ribs, so he wasn't going to be able to play. So they called me and said, hey, do you think you could help us out and do these gigs? And so I did it. We went and did a bunch of dates, and they were doing like, 3-nighters. We did some stuff, like we opened for Jerry Jock Walker, Ozark Mountain Daredevils, like some stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a super cool gig. And then, their drummer gets better. And then I think he decided he was going to go do more of like a new wave punky thing. And so they called me up, and I was back in the band, and, we were doing the touring thing. And when I say touring, like we've got a modified school bus that we built bunks in and that kind of stuff. But it was super, it was really fun and great crowds and great energy. But the 2 brothers that were running the band, one was married and just going to have a baby. The other one wanted to get married, and they kind of wanted to go settle in Colorado. And I kind of realized that two things were kind of happening. One is I realized that if I'm going to do this for a living, my, well-being, my future is tied to and contingent upon being around a bunch of other people that are in the same place as me in life. Like you got to have 5 guys all that sort of want the same thing for it to work out. And I just realized that wasn't happening. And it wasn't about the money or the financial security as much as just for the long term, I feel like I'm going to need to do something where I am relying more on myself than on a bunch of other people. And so I told them, when you guys go to Colorado, I'm going to leave the band and I'm going to go settle somewhere. So they got a drummer from Fargo, North Dakota, and he basically gave the band he was in, gave them like 3 days notice that he was leaving. So that band asked me to fill in until they found a drummer. And so we're playing, but all localized in town. And I decided I'm going to go to school to, get prepared for whatever the next chapter of Dave is. And I had dated this woman who was a hairdresser and owned a hair salon, and she said, if you ever get tired of playing music, I think you would really enjoy this. And one of the guys in the band had been a hairdresser before he joined the band. So I had kind of heard it from a few people saying this might be something for you. I really wanted to go to radio broadcasting school. So I settled in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is right across the river from Fargo. Most people, when they hear Fargo, they think of the movie or they just think of straight, flyover country. But there was a really, late 70s, early 80s, there was a killer music scene. There's 3 colleges in between those 2 cities. So really vibrant music scene, a lot of clubs to play, a lot of really great players. So I kind of settled in. I wanted to go to radio broadcast school, but it was 2 hours away. And so I went to school, got my license, became a hairdresser, went to work in a salon. So I'm working during the day, every day, playing every night. And, I just thought there's no reason not to play, but I really wanted to figure out how do I parlay this salon thing into something else. And I went and took this business class from this guy who is now my business partner. But he was one of the first guys to teach hairdressers how to make money. Like, how do you take your art and turn it into a great living for yourself and your family? And I was hooked, and I literally stalked this man until he gave me a job.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you'll be bashful about this, but I don't want to put too fine a point on it. Don't want to steal any of your thunder, but you co-own or own one of the largest salon consulting groups in the country. So, you definitely parlayed it into something, right?
Yeah, it turned into a really great thing, but it was the same thing, Jamie, and I hear you talk about this all the time on your show, just about figuring out what you want and being persistent about it. And I was living in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is 4 hours away from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and this guy's doing these classes every Monday. And so I was getting up at 4 a.m, making the 4-hour drive. I did that 5 Mondays in a row. And I would just go there and I would hang out. I would take out the trash. I would, pack boxes. I would unpack boxes. I would do anything I could to help out. And around the 4th or 5th week, this guy's wife said, I don't think he's going to go away. Maybe we should hire him and put him to work. And so, so I started that gig, left the salon, and, became a trainer and a consultant, teaching business classes. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 35 years. And I worked for him for a bunch of years, and then he got an endorsement contract deal with someone. And so I started my own thing, doing basically the same work. And then in the late 90s, early around 2000, he came to me and said, I'm hooking up with this guy. We're going to do a bunch of seminars, but we're also going to do follow-up consulting. So, people can come and learn everything they need to learn. But then if they want to have somebody come and help them with the implementation, we're going to do that too. And so I got involved when I joined that thing. There were 6 of us in the company. Today, I think we're like 140 people scattered all over the U.S. and Canada. So, it's been a super, super great run. And, it's really meaningful work. And honestly, I feel like it's what I was put on the planet to do. So, for like 5 or 6 years when I was getting all of that happening, developing that, and it's a ton of travel. I think the last 5 years, I think I've traveled 48 weeks each of those 5 years. And then I disappear to Mexico for 4 weeks in the winter.
Right.
So, it's a grind, but when I got it going, I kind of stopped playing for 5 or 6 years. And then I got the itch and wanted to do something, but because I was traveling so much for work, I couldn't be in anything that had a lot of regular gigs. And honestly, really what I wanted to do is just make music again. So, I met Terry, who is the lead singer in the Belfast Cowboys, the band I'm in now. And he and this other guy who was a booking agent had this little thing. They were just getting together, making noise, and the drummer that they were hanging out with was going to California to school. So they said, you want to just come and, make noise with us? So I did that. We had this band, and we rented rehearsal space, and the 4 of us would get together every Thursday night, and we really didn't play out much. Brian being a booking agent, when we did play out, it was always some like super sweet gig. Like we opened for Cheap Trick once.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Yeah.
We did an opening thing for Radney Foster when he came through town. And so it was like those were the kinds of gigs. If we're going to play out, it was that kind of stuff. But it was really about the Thursday night hang. And we just created this amazing brotherhood. Like we still have a text thread that, we're scattered around different parts of the country now, but we still, it's really, if I recall correctly, 9/11 happened on a Tuesday.
Yes.
And that Thursday, we kept our Thursday night gig, but everybody arrived. We went in that room. Nobody said a word.
Yeah.
We all got behind our instruments. We cranked out What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding, and then just wailed through like 10, some Replacements, some Neil Young, just loud and aggressive and cathartic. And, we got through those first 8 or 10 songs, and then all 4 of us are just sobbing in the room, like not only about what had happened, but how healing it was for us to be in that space and just get it all out. And, it's one of the things I love the most about music is that, and it's hard to explain to somebody who isn't in music. It's like you're closer to the people in that band than you are going to be to anyone else in your life. And it's for no other reason than just that common thread and that common bond of what you create when you're together. And so we, we're doing the Thursday night thing. We play out a few times. Brian, the booking agent, there was some kind of a fundraiser happening, and he was putting together a bunch of bands, and everybody had to pick an artist and do like 8 or 10 songs of that artist. And we had done a bunch of Van Morrison stuff just because Terry, the singer, is really was really into him. So we had a bunch of those in our catalog, and we learned a couple of more. And so we went and did that show. That was super fun. And, Brian's booking this local guy, a guy named Martin Zeller, who is a singer-songwriter. He's also had a band called the Gear Daddies, which is was a local band here, but they were like kind of the first roots rock alternative country kind of vibe, early adopters of that and really popular. But Martin put together this Neil Diamond tribute just for fun because he loves Neil, and it was just a fun thing to do. And, Brian said he's doing a ton of these things and they really draw well. Maybe we should think about doing the same thing with a Van Morrison. And, we kind of had, the seed was planted and we had thought about it, talked about it, but nothing really happened. And then we decided, and I can't remember how we ran into a couple of horn players, and had mentioned it and they were all on it. So we decided we would, do a Van Morrison, tribute thing on St. Patrick's Day. This was in 2002. So we do the gig. It's wildly successful. People loved it. We loved it. And so we kind of did some more shows and started building on that. And, St. Patrick's Day, it was 18 years this year since we started that band. And Terry and I are the last two original members of the band, but everybody else has kind of been in it. Now our core group is like 15 or 17 years. So the group has been pretty tight. We have backups at every position except for the singer. So, we do a lot of playing, and for a long time it really worked well for me professionally because we play the first Saturday of every month at a club here. They're closed now, but called Lee's Liquor Lounge. And anybody who hears this who's a national touring musician probably knows of Lee's. It's a legendary place.
Yep.
So we were there the first Saturday of every month. Another club the third Saturday of every month. And because those things were so regular, I could schedule my day work. A lot of my stuff would happen on Sundays because salons are closed. So I could kind of work my schedule so I'd be in town to play. And then the Lee's got sold. We kind of got off the roster there. The other club closed, and we didn't have those regular, preset gigs anymore. We're still working a lot. So there's the guy that had been kind of subbing when I was out of town. And then we have a sub group of the big band called St. Dominic's Trio that does more like 3 or 4 piece. They do a Tuesday night gig every week, and just kind of more covers and just pulling stuff out of thin air. And so for a while, the guy who did the Tuesday night thing was subbing for me. And now I don't even like to call him a sub. Like, he and I straight up share the gig. His name is Dave too. Super great guy. We love each other's drumming. We love each other, and it works out great for us to just share the gig. So I still get to play, I try to play a couple of times a month, if I can. And, it's super fun. The COVID thing has kind of wiped that stuff out, but we actually played a show a week ago, 10 days ago on Saturday. There's a place a music room that we played that is in an old multiplex theater, and they are created an outdoor stage, and they have a huge parking lot, and for a movie theater, like tons of parking spaces. So they figured out how to set up the stage and the band area in a way where it could be really removed from people and protected. But also you can have a lot of people there and they can all have room to be socially distant. So, we did that gig, like I said, about 10 days ago. And, when people come to the venue, they bring their own lawn chair. But the venue gives them a 6-foot foam, swimming pool noodle.
Yeah.
So they know how to distance themselves from the other groups. And, obviously groups who come together, are hanging really close together. But as an artist, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, if you have to question, are we a part of the problem by doing this? But, at the same time, we can't all be holed up in our homes forever. And so
yeah,
we feel like that venue particularly they're making it as safe as it can be. I think we all agree we're not ready to do indoor shows right now, but it felt so good to play because none of us had played for 3 months, and we did the sound check. We played 2 songs, and I told Terry after sound check, I said, if they told us the show's called off, pack up your stuff and go home, I would be totally satisfied. That's how good it felt to play those couple of songs. And so, I think it'll always be a part of my life.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a great story that, here you are, a very successful businessman, but you are still playing at a very high level, which, and one of the themes on this show is, not everybody can make a living playing drums. I've always had a day career that I call it, The other issue that I think we're all running into right now, you can't really do indoor shows, but even if you could, down here in my area, it's, hey, if you're going to open up, you can only be at 30% capacity or whatever the case may be. What musician who's playing for, a guarantee and a cut of the door wants to, go play a show where there's only going to be 30% capacity. Nobody wants to do that. So there's just no live music right now. So I'm glad you guys got to do that. And before I forget, I do want to say, you graciously, shared some Belfast Cowboys material with me. And as I told you, I'm a fan of Van Morrison, and I thought, well, how good could it be really, but you guys are really awesome. I mean, it's a really good band. And, I would,
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I would say to folks, if you're into Van Morrison, you need to look up Dave and his group because you guys are incredible.
Yeah, I think part of it is, we definitely have a passion for it, and Terry's, a great, he mimics Van very well, but we're not trying to copy Van. Terry grew up on Stones and replacements, and that comes out in the way we deliver Van sometimes, so some of the things we kind of rock them up more. Some of the things we do a little more true to the records, but, the horn section, our main guys have, been playing so long, playing this stuff so much, they don't use charts anymore. I mean, we all know what the other people are doing, and it's fun to play the music because so many people know about, like, he's an icon certainly of our generation, but also a lot of people that may only be familiar with the hits. They hear us go deep in the catalog and they hear things and realize, oh, I've heard that before, but I had no idea it was Van Morrison.
Yeah.
And so it's a really satisfying gig because, I mean, people love his music, and, we throw in, like a half dozen or a dozen original songs, but even the stuff that we do that's original, we're building horn parts for it. So it fits it's not a jarring, like, where in the hell did that song come from? It kind of fits into the vibe of what we're doing. And, we love like the 3-hour marathon shows, and, we could do that 2 nights in a row and not repeat any songs. So, we're pretty deep in the catalog, and it's super, super fun gig. And it's, to be honest, I mean, I absolutely love what I do for my career. I love, we have a great company, so many wonderful human beings in that. It's just, it doesn't feel like work when I'm doing it, but it is nice to have this outlet. And, I rent a rehearsal space, partly just so if I don't get to play gigs, I still get to play. I'm like an old school. I have 5 Slingerland kits from the 60s and 70s, and also a little orphan kit from, pieces of different places. So I kind of need a place to store all that stuff. But, it's a great outlet for, a lot of people play golf to relieve stress from their day gig. I like playing drums, and it's a good thing and a really important part of life. It's sad to me to see the arts being diminished and, the lack of support in the school systems. I just feel like we suffer in a lot of ways from that being the case. And so I really love being a part of keeping that alive and, try to support other people doing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I can't thank you enough for reaching out to me. And if you're okay with me sharing it, I'll tell everybody how we got hooked up. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this is the kind of guy that Dave is. Dave emailed me. As I say in every episode, I answer every single email that I get that comes to the Drum Shuffle podcast at gmail.com. Well, Dave emailed me and said, hey, I've been listening to the show quite a bit on my walks during all this COVID stuff. He was like, I've been a drummer in Minnesota for many years. Here are 3 guys that are in the scene up here that you should have on the show, and it was just a really cool introduction. And as we kind of went back and forth with the email, I was like, Dave, you've got a great story that we should tell on the show. Would you be interested in being a guest? So that's kind of how these things happen. But it was your kindness to reach out and say, hey, I really like the show. Here are some guys that I can, potentially get you in touch with that you should have on as a guest. And,
I think I even said, I'm not trying to get on the show.
Yeah, you did.
You got to get these guys.
Yeah, you absolutely did. But, I thought, hey, here's a guy that's playing at a really high level, but, his mortgage payment is not dependent upon having a gig next week. That's a good story for other drummers to hear, I think,
Yeah, and I think, to me, it's really about everybody figuring out, where does drumming fit in your life? Is it how you're going to make your living? Do you want to be on the big stage in the stadium? Do you want to be in the corner at the BFW on Friday and Saturday night? Or do you just want to have a group of guys that you get together and let out your pent-up aggression? As many drummers as there are, I think there are that many ways to do it right. You just have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and not to put too fine a point on that, Liberty DeVito, who we had on the show, the great Lib DeVito, who has a book coming out here in just mere days, which I can't wait to get a copy and read. But, he said on this show that by the end of his time with Billy Joel, he was having less fun than the guys that got together on Sunday afternoon and cracked a couple of cold beers and played Wipeout for 4 hours in the basement, So you do have to find, what groove do you fit into? And I'm here to tell you right now, keep doing what you're doing, because your drumming is great and your band is great. You don't have to give up your career to be a drummer, and vice versa. You don't have to give up drumming to have a career.
Yeah, and I think it's, it provides me the balance I need in life. Otherwise, I would just work all the time. So it's a great outlet, and it's a fun way to escape.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, Dave, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I really do appreciate it. And, it goes without saying, you're welcome here anytime. We can have a cool drummer hang anytime you want to. But, do you have some way, if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to ask, about your business life, do you have a way easily for folks to hook up with you?
Yeah, you can get hip to the Belfast Cowboys thing. It's belfastcowboys.com. And you can go there, you can see shows and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's a bunch of music there. And our stuff is available on all the usual places, Spotify, iTunes, all that. And then I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I don't really do anything there. The easiest way for people to find me is on Facebook. It's just Dave Kirby. And there's a bunch of them, but there's a picture. I can't remember exactly what the profile picture is, but it's either me behind a drum kit or it's a picture of a drum kit. So it'll be kind of easy to sort that out. And then from there, just reach out to me. And if you're a salon person and have questions about any of that stuff, you can catch me there, and happy to, get you all the help you need, or just talk,
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, listen, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. We'll stay in touch, and we'll get you back on here before too long. And, one thing we didn't get to is to talk about that just amazing, Minnesota scene. Everybody talks about Minneapolis, but I know there's more to it than that. But so many great artists came out of that scene in your heyday. I'm talking Soul Asylum. Of course, you've got the great Prince, the Jayhawks. Sunvolt has a connection to Minneapolis. Just so much good music came out of that area. So we have to have you back to talk about that.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah, it's a great place to live, and people are nice. They support the arts, they support music, and in this day and age, I think those are really important things. And we all right now just need to kind of tread gently and leave a gentle wake. And Minneapolis is a place that's really conducive to that. So
yeah, for sure. All right, well, Dave, man, thanks again, and we'll talk to you real soon. Okay.
My pleasure. Thanks again.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right, guys and girls, that's going to wrap up episode 107 of the Drum Shuffle podcast. I sincerely thank you for tuning in and listening. We simply can't do this show without each and every one of you doing so each and every week. If you'd like to help the Drum Shuffle, the biggest thing we can ask you to do, share a link with a friend. Tell somebody hey, check out this podcast. I think you'll enjoy it. We really do appreciate you guys helping us to grow through your efforts and your word of mouth recommendations. We sincerely appreciate that. As is always the case, we answer every single email we get here at the Drum Shuffle podcast. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so at thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com, and you can always find more information about me over at jamieeads.com. Hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you use to listen in. Leave us a star rating, a review, give us a like on Facebook, wherever you're connecting to us from. Let folks know that you enjoy it. That helps us more than you'll ever know. And again, we do sincerely appreciate that. We have some fantastic episodes coming up over the next several weeks. Next week, we are going to be joined by the great Michael Bland. You're going to be familiar with Michael's work with Prince and the new Power Generation. And Michael is currently the drummer of Soul Asylum, one of my all-time favorite bands. And he was one of the individuals that Dave Kirby reached out and said, hey, you should have Michael Bland on the show. And I'm very pleased that we were able to make that happen. So you're not going to want to miss some of these episodes. So make sure you've hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode of the Drum Shuffle. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We can't do it without you. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.